All throughout the summer, writers, broadcasters, and analysts alike all lampooned the Jets as they were tanking for the future and Sam Darnold. Fast forward to Week 6, and now those same critics are bashing the Jets for not playing and coaching better after a 7-point loss to the defending Super Bowl champs. We'll break down the loss, the highlights, the lowlights, and of course, call out the critics as Jets Confidential Radio on Prime Sports Network starts now. It's Monday, the 16th of October, 2017, and to order a subscription of Jets Confidential magazine, you can go online at jetsconfidential.com. Jets lose by 7 to the Patriots, and as I just said, you would have thought that the Jets were predicted in the beginning of the season as a Super Bowl contender, and they had just gone out and signed $100 million worth of contracts. Expectations were super high, and then we saw the game yesterday, and we heard the critics. But that's not how the last few months have worked out. That's not what we heard before the season started. That's really not what we should have heard yesterday or even today. I know everybody wants to talk about, or a lot of people want to talk about the terrible call. We'll get into that, of course. I don't know what else there is to say other than how terrible the call was, but what I take out of this, as I just said, it's you know what, I could say it's getting old, but it's been old for years, and that's why we always try to keep it real here, and I'm sure our loyal listeners know that, which is why in the beginning of the season, even before the season began, we told you that there was a best case scenario for the Jets to be 3-2 heading into the game against New England when nobody else thought that could happen. And you know what? We've kept it real the whole season, and we're going to keep it real here. Jets played as good as you could expect them to play yesterday. I think there should be nothing but commendations about what has gone on with this team over the first 6 weeks. And instead, they're getting criticized, and why can't they do this, and why can't they do that? I don't know if you want to call it New York. You probably can, but it's sad, it really is. But better for us. Let's welcome in my co-host to the show, sports writer at RotoWire.com, Jan Levine. And so, Jan, as we said last week coming into this game, you know what? If the fans, how could the fans not want, and I'm not even criticizing the fans, of course, but if the fans knew that they'd be 3-2 with the Patriot game coming on Sunday before the season began, and they could be able to go to the game and have a great time, and the game would go down to the last possession, and even if they lost, would the Jets fans take it, and would they be feeling pretty good about this team? I think just about 99.9% of the fans would say yes. And I still believe that that's the case, but leave it to the critics. Can't be good enough for the critics.
Well, I mean, I think the best way to summarize it is fans were betwixt and between. As you said, best case scenario, the team was going to be 3-2 going into Week 6. I don't think most of us expected that realistic or potentially realistic scenario to happen. Sure enough, it did. Up 14-0. You're not thinking tanking. You're not thinking playing for 2018. You're thinking about somehow beating the team that seems to love beating us in any way possible, which is the Patriots, and you're up 14-0, and you're looking, oh, we're looking good, and then all of a sudden, you know, you could use the line same old Jets, but I don't think it's necessarily fair to use that line. New England, in my opinion, is a better team. The Jets made certain mistakes that came back to haunt them. Now you can argue that the officials clearly didn't help them with some of the calls in terms of calls made and or calls not made. You can say the same thing also in terms about the Jets as a whole, in terms of their offense, their lack of speeding up the offense, the taking too long in the huddle, the utilization of the 2 timeouts in the second half. Defensively, I thought they played fairly well. The problem was, you know, to beat the Patriots, you have to get consistent pressure on Tom Brady, and you have to speed him up, and you have to make him throw the ball when he doesn't want to throw the ball like any quarterback, but you have to hit him, and you have to hit him and keep hitting him. And the Jets failed to do that both from their front 3 or front 4 and their front 7 overall. And Rob Gronkowski was Rob Gronkowski yesterday. They made a couple more plays in the Jets. You know, I don't think that Adams had a horrible game, but he's going up against a guy who's a all-world tight end who is a potential Hall of Famer and got burnt on one play. On another play, I actually think that the officials made a pretty lousy call in terms of the pass interference, given that the hand fighting that was going on. But the officials didn't help matters. But give New England credit; they took advantage of the opportunities that were given to them. The Jets failed to do that. They bad turnover at the end of the first half was a huge one. In my opinion, also, which was a kind of a silly play, was at the end of the game with Curley back there and returning the punt. Don't go backwards. Don't get a penalty. Just you usually take fair catches. Take the fair catch then. Save the time on the clock. But what the Jets did show yesterday is, despite New England being a better team overall than they are, the Jets were far from outclassed yesterday, and they went toe to toe with them. If that call doesn't happen, with an overturned touchdown, you're looking at a 24-21 game with about 8 minutes to go. That's anybody's ball game. And even down the stretch, they had a shot to potentially, with some luck, come back and tie it. It didn't necessarily work out that way. But as a Jets fan, what you do take is solace, and even though there's no moral losses and no moral gains in terms of losing, you take solace in that your team went toe to toe with a team that likely is going to win the division, that's viewed as still probably the best Super Bowl contender coming out of the AFC, and you showed that you're not going to be overmatched despite certain things occurring during the game.
Well, look, and we said this in the beginning of the season. We talked about the talent level is not as bad as everybody wanted to make it out to be, that we're another good offseason away, and a quarterback in this team is more than capable of competing in the playoffs, and that's exactly what we saw and have seen so far this season. As good as Josh McCown has played at times, as good as he played early on in the game, he can only do so much. He's just, his talent is what it is. And once again, that's what we see. He can only do so much. And when we need him to do more, because the team needs him to do more, he can't. He's just not capable of it. He's not that good. And what we did see is we saw a team that with a little bit better, a little bit more talent at the quarterback position, maybe they win the game. And a little older veterans, once these young kids start to play a little bit more, maybe they win the game. So a year or two from now, realistically, when we're actually thinking about being a championship team, we can actually think about that possibility 2 years from now. We don't have to think about like it was a few months ago. This is a disaster. This is going to take 6 years. This is just ridiculous. No, it's not going to take 5 or 6 years. You go out, get a quarterback. You make a couple of changes on offense and defense. Hopefully your coaching staff knows what they're doing, and this team can make a lot quicker turnaround than most people thought that they could. I think we saw that on Sunday. And just listening to SNY yesterday, watching them, I mean, these guys are, I mean, did they all have a bet on the game or something? The grades they gave for the Jets: offense, D+, D and C-, defense, D+, D and C-, coaching, F, D and C-. They almost beat the Patriots, and they're getting destroyed as far as grades for offense, defense, and coaching, when, by the way, the Jets had more yards than New England. When, by the way, Brady was held to a season low 257 yards passing, his second worst completion percentage of the season. So this ridiculousness and the nitpicking about, but they didn't do this, but they didn't do that, but they could have done this. I mean, seriously, what are we doing here? Are we a Super Bowl team? No, we're not. So what? I mean, and I have no problem criticizing a few things here and there, and maybe if they'd done this, and sure, it'd be nice if this guy did this, but this is what we have at quarterback. This is what the team is. They're a young team. What do you expect? This is what it is. So enjoy it, and be upset when you lose. You should be. But to criticize like this team is something they're not is just annoying.
So in terms of the grades, I mean, I think offensively, what you can take out of the game is that the running attack was pretty much non-existent.
And it's not going to be. We talked about that last week. That's how you stop the Jets, because of McCown. Right. You force him to beat you.
Even though Forte came back and had a pretty decent game, Elijah McGuire didn't have a great game. I think that's partly to derive why the rating was so low in terms of the ranking. I wouldn't necessarily agree with that grade. I think defensive, as I said, the key was that didn't generate any sort of consistent pass rush on Brady.
I don't care if they pass rush at all. I'll take 257 yards for Tom Brady any day and 52% completion percentage. I couldn't care less if they have no sacks. Well, maybe I should take 3 sacks and 8 pressures if I give up 400 yards. Is that what I want? Come on. I mean, I don't care. 257 yards, 52% completion percentage. What else do you want?
Again, I think the coaching grade was probably impacted by the use of the 2 timeouts and
which they didn't need, by the way. They didn't need it. They didn't need it
because
they had the ball at the end.
It could have been beneficial to have them.
No, but they didn't need it.
Yes, I disagree with you on that, but okay. Again, I'm not saying I agree with the grades. I'm just explaining why they may have used that grade. Look, I think as a Jets fan,
I don't know why you're trying to explain people who are completely wrong, but go ahead.
Well, again, so coming out of the game, I positive for the future. I'd love to see Darren Lee be able to move back to the outside where I think he's much better suited than on the inside. I wasn't enamored by the pressure or the lack thereof, but
yeah, but we're used to that. They don't have, that.
Know.
We're never this. That's what I'm trying to say is this season, are people just get that out of their minds? We're not going to pressure anybody unless we blitz, and that's going to be from DBs. We're not going to pressure them. But at least, aren't you at least satisfied that, because don't you, we talked about the last couple of weeks, that at least they have come to the conclusion, which is when they traded Richardson away, that they said, okay, we're going to play a certain defense. Because, look, we've agreed all along that we wish they would be more creative and play 4-3, play more, because that is more conducive to their talent. But they don't want to do that. Okay, they have limitations being creative that way. Okay, fine. But at least they are going back to what they feel that they could do best, and that is we're going to run our standard base, 3-4 looks. And we're going to use Leonard Williams and Muhammad Wilkerson just like your standard 3-4 defensive linemen, which are those are the guys that are supposed to hold up tackles, clog the lanes. Hopefully your linebackers make plays. Hopefully your DBs come in and blitz. They're not there to rush the passer. So I don't care about the sacks. All I care about is on the scoreboard. Do we stop the team? Do we do a good enough job of shutting them down in some areas like they did with the passing game? That's all I care about, because we know what the limitations are. We know they can't rush the passer. They just can't.
Agreed. And this is one of those things that you would like to see them hopefully get better in, or at least have some modicum of pressure so it doesn't put all the pressure on the linebackers in terms of having to step up and try to create a pass rush that way. But what I think the big thing that we take out of the game, though, is the team may end up having to make a very interesting decision after the season. What I mean by that is, coming into the year, a lot of us, including myself, expected it to be a year where they fell way down in the rankings in terms of the record and getting a high pick to get a quarterback. Given what they've done so far, and again, there's still a long way to go, that may not end up being the case later on this year. And what should be very interesting is that if that proves to be the case moving forward, next year may be a decision where they look for a good medium-term or veteran quarterback and taking a QB later, and thereby addressing other needs during the course of the draft, which was probably not what we expected if you would have asked people 2 months ago what this year would end up transpiring and what it would bring in terms of the draft next year.
And that's the reason why we want to see Bryce Petty. That's the reason why the longer this goes on and we don't get to see whether he has what it takes, that those questions could remain unanswered as far as the quarterback situation. Now, we hope that all 5 quarterbacks, it helps us, of course, if all 5 quarterbacks that could go in the first 40 picks decide to come out. If they all do come out, the funny thing is the way Sam Darnold's playing. And by the way, I just don't see Sam Darnold coming out. I think a lot of people are kind of now getting the impression that unless he turns things around real quickly, he probably will stay in school because he has to. He's just not ready. But if he does come out, the funny thing is that there would actually be a possibility that he could be like the 3rd quarterback taken. And if he was the 3rd quarterback taken, that the Jets, if they're sitting there at 10 or 12, could wind up still getting Sam Darnold by not having to do anything. So that actually would be kind of funny. But even if 4 of them come out, you throw in Mason Rudolph, you got Baker Mayfield, of course, with Allen and Rosen. With the Jets, they got the extra second round pick. They have enough ammunition where they could still move up a little bit, from say 12 to 8 or something like that if they had to, and it wouldn't destroy their draft picks. And I'd be okay with that. We just don't want to see them, mortgage the future the way the Bears did.
And the jury's still out on Trubisky, so I'm not going to say that they made a mistake.
I'm not talking about the player. I'm just talking about having to give up all that
they gave up a lot of assets. They moved up a ton of assets to move up in the draft.
Yeah.
And it may be the same thing this year. Look, the guy who right now is clearly by far the best quarterback and still may end up the best quarterback overall is Deshaun Watson. And look how far he slipped by compared to where everybody thought he might go.
Yeah. So so again, more quarterbacks that come out, the better for the Jets. And look, anything short, of course, of Petty getting in there, playing 8 games and wowing everybody, the chances are the Jets are definitely going to use that pick. But again, that is why I would like to see him, because if we saw him and it looked like, wait a second, maybe he could be our quarterback, then you can wait maybe to the second round, and then you can use up an asset early on, because I agree. I mean, there's a couple positions now that the Jets definitely, look, we could sit here all day and talk once again about how they need a pass rusher, but that is it's so obvious. It's every year it's obvious that right there, 1A, their top need besides quarterback is pass rusher. So they've needed a quarterback and a pass rusher for I don't know how long, and they still need a quarterback and a pass rusher. But besides that, they definitely need another offensive lineman, and they need another DB. But besides that, you know what? They don't have as many weaknesses as much as people originally thought. I think we're seeing that right now. And if they don't have to mortgage a lot of draft picks, and if a quarterback lands on their lap at 10 or 12, if that's where they end up picking, then if they make a couple of wise picks with their first 3 next year's draft, they have all that money to spend in free agency, or like you said, maybe you go out and get an A.J. McCarron. You go out and get one of those younger quarterbacks that you think might be able to start for your team. Not sure that's the way they would go, but that's a possibility. That would be better for the team because at least we now know that as we said before, with a good offseason, this team is not that far away from being very competitive next season.
Well, you have to like what you've seen out of the 2 kid DBs. I mean, we talked about them a lot. You have to like so far what you've seen out of Morris Claiborne, and we've talked about it before. The key with Claiborne is
staying healthy.
Can he stay healthy?
Yep.
Right now, he has stayed healthy. If he proves and gets through the year that way, it'd be very interesting to see if the Jets sought him to a long-term deal, because honestly, between those 3 and Buster Screen had a really good game yesterday.
He did.
That missed pick, notwithstanding, and boy, if he made that pick, we might be talking a whole different game today.
Yeah.
Because he might have gone the whole way to make it 21 zip. But I think, I remember correctly, compared to the number of targets that he had, the percentage was extremely low, and he had an unbelievable game in terms of from an advanced metrics perspective. And that's what you like to see out of a cornerback who, coming into the year, did take a lot of heat from all of us because he really had regressed over the last couple of years. But he raised his game. He had a really strong game. If you look at those 4, and granted, you never know what's going to happen, and growth from year to year isn't necessarily going to occur based upon what we've seen to date. But if you look at those guys, if you can move Lee from inside back to outside, we can use his speed and get yourself an inside linebacker and a pass rusher, all of a sudden a really potentially good D can become a potentially really great defense. And those are things you can potentially find in free agency or somehow in the draft, enabling them to focus on the offensive side of the ball.
You know what they probably need to find in free agency is a nose tackle, because finding nose tackles in the draft is not very easy, because most of them for that position in a 3-4 aren't going to be first-round draft picks anyway. And once you start sliding down the draft for those types of guys, usually you get those guys in the middle rounds anyway. So if they really want to make sure they get a solid guy at that spot, you got to probably use some of your money in free agency on that position. And if they can do that, along with Coney Ealy, Wilkerson, that's still going to be, we'll see what happens. I don't think there's any doubt that unless, his game raises to a level by the end of the season, that what they'll probably do is restructure his contract. And hopefully he'd want to stay at a cheaper price, and they could have him, and they can have Ely, and they could have Leonard Williams, and then you bring in a nose tackle, and I think all of a sudden you got something going there. But it is getting kind of old watching, as good as I think Jordan Jenkins could be in similar role, I mean, in type and run defense roles. I mean, the fact that they just keep throwing him out there in pass rushing situations, it's like, I think I could rush the passer better. I mean, he does nothing. So they have to figure out other ways, or maybe get some other guys an opportunity. But you know what? This is what it is. I mean, the players that are on the roster, this is what they got to work with. And we just have to sit back and deal with it. And you just got to admire the fact that, again, Buster Skrine, like you said, played well. And I'm going to tell you, I think Darren Lee and Jamal Adams, I think they did as good as you could expect them to do against Gronk. Him and Brady are like the combination in football. And it's like every time Gronk caught a pass, guys were all over him. To the point what you said, that turning point in the game was actually that Skrine missed interception drive. Not just because of Skrine not being able to pick that pass off, but because the penalty on Adams was on the same drive. And that was on 2nd and 8 at the Jet 25. That was a lousy call. It basically handed the Patriots a touchdown. So the refs basically handed the Patriots a 14-point swing in the game. With that, actually, you could double that and say 28. For the 7 there, and then the other 7 on the terrible call. So that was a bad call. That could have been 3rd and 8 at the 25. Who knows if the Patriots wind up getting a first down on that possession. So that was really the big definer there, was the combination of Skrine not being able to pick that off and Jamal Adams' terrible call on him. But you know what? Again, I think Adams and Darren Lee, they were all over Gronk for the most part. Lee had a good forced fumble in the game. So in general, I think guys like Darren Lee and Skrine that we've kind of criticized most of the season, I thought they saved their best for the New England game, and that's promising. And so yeah, I mean, look, it is what it is. If they had a little bit more talent at the position, when you're in an equal game and you're kind of looking at the stats and you're looking at the game and you're going, this game could have gone either way. The difference in the NFL is at quarterback, and they have Brady and we have McCown.
Baseball, as any sport, is a game of inches. Football is a game of inches, as we saw yesterday also. And look, Brady is Brady. I mean, he's one of the elite quarterbacks for a reason, and he's been an elite quarterback for the ability to bring his team back. And I think every Jet fan knew that at 14-0, this game was long and far from over. And even if the Jets had gone up 21-0, as we saw in last year's Super Bowl, there's no guarantee that Brady wouldn't have brought them back either. The job just would have gotten a lot harder. Adams learns from facing Gronkowski, learns what it's like to go against him. May the same thing. Lee is still young enough where he's continuing to learn. The experience they get will hopefully benefit them in the future. You don't have to necessarily shut him down on every play, but on certain key plays, if you're able to shut him down, that makes a difference between winning and losing. And that the call down the sideline when they were hand fighting and Gronkowski kind of got away with a little push to the face mask, and Adams turns, but maybe not enough. That's one of those as a Jets fan you want to see as a no call. Official made the call. Ended up being a huge component of the game in terms of the 7, and then later on, Jets end up picking Brady. You're cruising, or at least you think you're getting a field goal, and McCown makes a horrific turnover there. Can't give the ball up there, and then all of a sudden, boom, 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 Brady leads him down the field. Huge pass to Cook. Touchdown, tie game at halftime, and all of a sudden, a lot of the momentum in the air went out of the building at that point in time.
Yeah, and again, I think that the limitations of McCown, for him to play his best game and it's still not to be enough. That's the thing that hurts, because you're not going to get better than this. This is what he can do. Now you don't want him to have to throw for over 300 yards in a game, because that means they're not running the ball. But as we said last week, if you're going to beat the Jets now, that's how you beat them. You stop the running game. You force McCown to throw the football, because, as we saw, the more he has to throw the football, like in anything, that's what they do at Vegas. They want you to play more. They want you to gamble more. Why do they want? Even if you're doing well and you're up on the sports book, why do they want you to keep playing because they know eventually you're going to lose. And that's what you're doing with McCown. You just keep, okay, we're giving up all this. McCown's doing this. He's doing that. He's off to a great start. Let's just keep it going because he can't keep it going. That's just his limitations. And against lesser teams, hey, the Jets win this game probably against 75% of the teams that they're playing. That's why you got to think of it as a good thing. Again, we would like there to be a situation, a quarterback a little bit better, but as long as the coaching staff's going to keep throwing McCown out there, then as fans, the only thing we could do is go, okay, we evaluate it and go, okay, McCown did the very best he possibly could under the circumstances. There's not much more they can ask from him.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you said it yourself. You said it the best way, right? When you talk about who they faced, you look at the 3 games that they won and the opponents that they faced, and you look at Sunday and the opponent that they faced. And if you are facing one of those 3 teams that you beat, you likely end up with another victory. You take a step up in class, and any little mistake that you make, and I use the term little in quotation marks, but any kind of error or any way you open the door, it affords them the opportunity to come back and push the door wide open. And this is exactly what happened because you gave Brady a little bit of a crack and he took advantage of it. And that's what good teams and good quarterbacks do. And you move on from there. And it's not a great loss. It's a quote unquote moral victory, though we know there are none in the NFL. But for us and for the team as a whole is looking at the growth because we're not expecting that much this year. And it's the ability to take what they've learned this year and move forward to hopefully grow from it this year, but especially grow from it next year and the next several years. And that's kind of what I viewed those games at. It would have been great to win, and it would have put them in a much different position, in a position that nobody expected them to be in. But even though that didn't happen, then now you're able to take that growth and hopefully still get a good draft pick, and also allow for the remainder of the season for the young players to increasingly see a ton of snap counts, which they're doing, and to get the experience on the field, which is basically what we thought this year was for.
Yeah, and develop a winning culture is always nice. With the new, we talked last week about the locker room. It's a new locker room. It's a better locker room. It's a closer locker room. They've got young guys like Adams. These are the guys. These are your leaders of the future. And, that's why it's good to have a guy like McCown there. That's a guy to learn from, to respect from. Obviously, even the young quarterbacks respect him. So all of that is going to bode well, especially when you are battling and you're not losing every game and you're winning some and you're losing some is fine. But this is everything that you want to build off of. So even if you end up 8-8 and you don't get the draft pick that you wanted, hopefully, again, this is why it's all up to Mike Maccagnan to get the best players because, look, I don't think there's any doubt now from what we've seen and what he's done with personnel, the moves he's made, some of the players he's brought in, guys that people might have said, a year ago, listen, Safarian Jenkins, are they taking a chance on this guy? The trade to not only get the second round pick, but to get Kearse at wide receiver, to be able to get guys like Anderson, from nowhere. To go out, lucky or not, to go out and get some of the players they've been able to draft, like Jamal Adams, and we're very satisfied, of course, with Marcus May. Oh, I can't believe they're drafting 2 safeties back to back. So there's so many other players. The Coney Ely pickup. We can go on, and this is Maccagnan. So I think he's already at this point stamped himself in this organization that. He deserves an A right now for what he's done. And now it's up to the coaching staff to keep getting the most out of these players all season long.
Bowles will be graded on the growth that we see in terms of the players for the rest of the year. I don't think he'll be graded necessarily on the record unless there's just an absolute complete collapse. And by that, I mean not even so much record, but if the team stops playing hard for him, which hasn't been the case. No. And as you said, Maccagnan's brought in guys that have really helped. I mean, you met Ely picking him off of waivers, and that was just a product of where they were at the end of the year and having a high pick. Getting Austin Safarian Jenkins, who last year looked like a bust, but he resurrected his career by realizing what he needed to work on. And right now, he's clearly one of the better tight ends that the Jets have probably had in their franchise, even though he's only been here for a couple of years, as odd as that may seem.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that's becoming a weapon. Touchdowns in 2 straight games. Should have had 2 touchdowns this week. a guy who can go up and get the ball, a guy who's a decent inline blocker, not great, much better suited to being a receiver, but he is a weapon, especially with the wide receivers being young and needing to grow. He's become a nice little safety valve. And when Powell comes back and the ability to split those guys out and the ability to create mismatches, that's going to be another thing that's going to help, because if you're going to cover Seferian Jenkins, then Powell can hopefully come out of the backfield and take advantage and some of the other wide receivers that they have. So he's been everything that the Jets could have expected this year and more, and a good move in terms of Jenkins, in terms of picking up Ely, in terms of some of the other things that McCagden's done to draft so far this year. I mean, we have to be happy with the first couple picks. Stewart has shown some signs. Hansen has shown some signs. So you have to be happy with what you've seen out of the draft so far this year as well.
Yeah, and then that's again, at some point we got to start seeing some of these younger kids. Hopefully we will, and that's something to talk about later on down the road. Again, it's nothing to keep getting involved with right now, but that is just the one thing that we just kind of gotta, kind of put on the side, is that as long as this team keeps winning, and say even if they win 2, lose 2, win 1, lose 1, the longer they keep going with McCown, it's going to become more of a problem by not seeing the younger quarterbacks. But that's something for a few weeks down the road. And, the good thing is when you take a look at the schedule now and you see Atlanta and Miami and Buffalo, especially the way Atlanta's looked. By the way, they're 0-2 against the AFC East, and they're going to play the Patriots this week. So they could go 0-3 against the AFC East. All of a sudden, thinking that the Jets can win 2 of the next 3, that's not crazy. I mean, the Dolphins, okay, nice win against Atlanta, but I mean, come on. I mean, it wasn't like they had a great game. A couple of scores gift drafted. Sure, they played nice, they played hard, but I mean, Dolphins aren't world beaters right now, and Bills are definitely beatable. So if going 2-1 in the next 3 weeks is I don't think it's asking for that much. That's definitely doable.
Absolutely. I mean, I still don't believe how Atlanta ended up having a shot to tie that game, and Ryan threw a really bad pick late because the time he threw it, they were pretty much in field goal range with an opportunity to win in overtime. So Dolphins got gifted a game yesterday, but you make your own breaks, and Jets should have a decent opportunity to win the game this week. I don't think anybody's afraid of Cutler, especially what you've seen so far to date in terms of him. And it's ironic, but you can almost honestly say that the Jets should be a favorite. If that game was at home, I think they probably would be a favorite, just because they're on the road in Miami. That Miami is a favorite in that game, because Miami has really not done much to impress any of us so far to date. So, as you said, the next couple of games, the Jets could very well go 2-1, especially if they played like they did the first half against New England yesterday. I think we'd all be surprised if they don't go 2-1 over the next 3.
All right, Jan. So next week we will talk more about the Dolphins, and then we'll see how things go the rest of the way. Nothing else earth-shattering as far as the roster is concerned. So anyway, look, after the first 6 weeks, 3-3, again, most fans would have bought that easily. So it is what it is, but it's good. I think it's good. I think everybody right now, overall just deserves definitely above average grades all along the line, and a couple more games to go before we get to the mid-season point, and then we can kind of have like a mid-season report card and everything. But again, right now, if we were doing a report card, everybody's above average as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say for the most part, I mean, still a couple of areas of remediation that need to be fixed. But in terms of the expectations of what we saw versus what the end result was, I don't think any of them get a negative grade. I mean, if you look especially the special teams, the only thing I'd obviously like to see better is better returns coming out of it. But Edwards has been really good. Catanzaro has been good. I mean, Bowles has been pretty good. Like I said, I don't love the fact that they had to use the timeouts yesterday. Morton has been aggressive where need be. I mean, you can argue maybe he was a little bit too aggressive with McCown, but if you're going to basically go for a shot to win, you're going to have to knock off a team that's a defending champion. You have to take chances, and that's kind of what they did. And the defense is what the defense is. I mean, you can only do so much, but you've given the young playmakers an opportunity to make plays, and it'll be a learning experience for them and which is kind of what we think the year is going to be. So we've seen some good signs out of the young guys. You'd like to, obviously the next, 6, 7, 8 games, as we move along the rest of the season, then going in towards the middle and the third quadrant of the year. This is really the key in terms of what you're going to see out of them moving forward.
All right. Sounds good, Jan. Appreciate it. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next Monday.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
Likewise. Thanks, Jan. It's Jan Levine, and he'll be with us every Monday, as he has been since the season started, talking Jets football. Before I let you go, how about this? Preseason, Brian Costello. Jets have not even played a game yet, and it already feels like 2017's over. Andy Benoit, Sports Illustrated. Thanks to the Sixers in basketball, it's trendy to throw up your arms and accuse teams of tanking. But what's now called tanking was once called building for the future, and smart teams were commended for it. That's what the Jets are doing. Athlon, 2017 Jets are in get younger, full-on rebuilding mode, with a roster majorly lacking in talent. They have almost zero shot of making the playoffs this season. One thing is for sure, this season likely will be a long one for this organization. So that's just a little bit of what everybody was saying before the season began. And as usual, they're all wrong. So for Jan, want to let everybody know once again to order a subscription to Jets Confidential magazine. Go to jetsconfidential.com. We'll see you in about 25 minutes for the Ourlads Football Network, NFL, college football, and fantasy football talk. And then we'll see you next Monday for more Jets talk right here on Jets Confidential Radio, Prime Sports Radio Network.